The champagne glass shattered against marble. Sarah's hands froze mid-reach as crystal shards exploded across table 7, glittering like diamonds under the chandelier of Le Bernardin, New York's most exclusive restaurant where a single meal cost more than her monthly rent. Her heart hammered. Not because of the broken glass. Not because of the angry executive who'd just thrown it. But because of the ring. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? I love connecting with you all around the world. The man at table 7, Marcus Thornwood, billionaire tech mogul, according to the reservation list, sat perfectly still as Sarah approached with a cloth and dustpan. Her manager would dock her pay for this. Again, third incident this month, even though none were her fault. But she couldn't focus on that. Her eyes locked onto his right hand, resting on the white tablecloth. The ring on his index finger caught the light, an antique sapphire surrounded by intricate silver filigree work, with a tiny inscription she couldn't quite read but somehow knew by heart. "I'm so sorry, sir," she murmured, kneeling to collect the glass. "Let me clean this up for you." "Leave it," Marcus said, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone used to obedience. "Someone else will handle it." Sarah's hands continued working. She couldn't afford to leave it. She couldn't afford anything, really. Not since Mom died 6 months ago, leaving nothing but debt and that small jewelry box Sarah kept under her bed. The jewelry box containing an identical ring. Her breath caught. The same unique sapphire. The same silver pattern that looked like intertwined vines. The same everything. "Sir," the word escaped before she could stop it. "That ring you're wearing." Marcus's eyes, steel gray and calculating, fixed on her for the first time. "Excuse me? My mother had one just like it." Sarah straightened, dustpan in hand, her voice barely above a whisper. "Exactly like it." The color drained from Marcus Thornwood's face. For a moment, the confident billionaire disappeared, replaced by something Sarah couldn't name. Fear? Guilt? Recognition? "What did you say?" His voice had dropped an octave. "The ring. My mother." Sarah swallowed hard. Why was he looking at her like that? She kept it in a jewelry box. She said it was the only thing she brought with her when she came to New York. When I was born. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against polished wood. The other diners glanced over, then quickly looked away. Nobody interrupted Marcus Thornwood. "Your mother's name." It wasn't a question. It was a command. "Elena. Elena Reeves." Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears. "Why? Did you know her?" The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He gripped the table edge, knuckles white. "Elena Reeves is your mother?" "Was. She passed away in June." Something flickered across his face. Genuine grief, raw and unexpected. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, thrust it toward her with shaking hands. "My office. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. His voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. "Don't be late, Sarah." "How do you know my name?" He gestured at her name tag, but Sarah noticed something else. He'd already crumpled his napkin, abandoning a half-eaten $200 steak. As he strode toward the exit, he paused, turning back. "That ring," Marcus said, his jaw tight. "Does it have an inscription inside?" "Latin words." Sarah's blood turned to ice. She'd never told anyone about the inscription. She'd barely been able to read it herself, worn and faded with time. "Veritas vincit," she whispered. "Truth conquers." Marcus closed his eyes, swaying slightly. When he opened them again, they held something that terrified Sarah more than anything she'd seen in her hard life. They held secrets. 9 a.m., Sarah. Your entire life is about to change. Sarah didn't sleep. She sat on her apartment floor, if you could call the converted storage closet an apartment, turning her mother's ring over in her hands. The sapphire caught the streetlight filtering through her single window, throwing blue shadows across walls thin enough to hear her neighbor's TV. Veritas vincit. Truth conquers. What truth? Her mother had been a hotel maid, then a hospital janitor, working herself to exhaustion for Sarah's education. There were no secrets in a life that small, that carefully controlled. No room for mystery when you're counting pennies for milk. Except there was that box. The locked jewelry box her mother never opened, never explained. When Sarah had asked about it as a child, Elena's face would close like a door, and she'd say, "Some things are better left buried, Mija." At 8:47 a.m., Sarah stood outside Thornwood Tower, a gleaming monument to excess in Midtown Manhattan. Her waitress uniform felt suddenly cheap, inappropriate. She'd called in sick, probably fired now, but something told her it didn't matter anymore. Marcus's assistant, a woman with a smile sharp as a scalpel, escorted her to the top floor. The penthouse office overlooked Central Park, a view worth more than Sarah would earn in 10 lifetimes. Marcus stood at the window, shoulders tense. Without turning, he said, "I loved your mother." The words sucked oxygen from the room. "Impossible," Sarah breathed. "She never mentioned, because I thought she was dead." Now he turned, and Sarah saw he'd aged a decade overnight. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. 26 years ago, Elena disappeared. No note, no explanation. My family told me she'd taken money, a lot of money, and vanished. They found her car at the pier. Everyone assumed that she drowned herself. Sarah's voice cracked. "My mother wasn't a thief." "No." Marcus pulled out a folder, thick with documents. "She wasn't, but someone made it look like she was." He spread papers across his desk, bank transfers, police reports, photographs. Young Marcus and young Elena, so in love it hurt to see. Then statements showing Elena's signature on withdrawals totaling $3 million from Thornwood family accounts. "These are forgeries," Sarah said immediately. "They have to be. I know that now." Marcus's jaw clenched. "I was 25, arrogant. When my father showed me the evidence, I believed him. I thought Elena had used me, that everything between us was a lie. I mourned her. Then I hated her. Then I tried to forget her. But you kept the ring." Marcus touched the sapphire unconsciously. "They were made as a pair. Engagement rings from my grandmother's estate. I gave Elena hers the night before she disappeared. The next morning, it was in my apartment with a note. 'I'm sorry. Forget me.'" Sarah's mind raced. Her mother had fled Marcus, fled $3 million in accusations, fled everything, 9 months before Sarah was born. The math was simple, devastating, obvious. "You're my father," Sarah whispered. Marcus nodded slowly. "I suspected the moment you said Elena Reeves. I had my people confirm it last night. DNA from your employment records." He laughed bitterly. "I've been searching for Elena for decades, Sarah. Hired investigators. Chased rumors. Never imagining she'd changed her last name, that she'd hidden in plain sight as a janitor in Queens. She was protecting me." The realization hit Sarah like a wave. From whoever framed her. "My father." The words dripped poison. "Charles Thornwood. He's still alive, Sarah. Still controls half my company's board. And when I confronted him last night about Elena, do you know what he said?" Sarah shook her head, afraid to hear it. "He laughed. Said Elena got what she deserved for trying to climb above her station. That he'd made sure she'd never come back to ruin me with a—" Marcus's voice broke. "With a bastard child." The slur hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. "He knew," Sarah said. "He knew she was pregnant. He knew everything, and he'll do anything to keep it buried." But where was the proof? Sarah's mother had left nothing. No diary, no evidence, just a ring and 26 years of silence. Unless, the inscription, Sarah said suddenly. "Why is it in Latin? Why truth conquers?" Marcus's eyes widened. "My grandmother's family motto." These rings were custom-made in 1952. The silversmith kept detailed records. He grabbed his phone, already dialing. "If we can prove Elena had her ring made before the theft allegations, it proves she didn't steal it. It proves someone gave it to her legitimately," Sarah finished, "as your fiancé, which means she had legitimate access to family accounts, maybe even to the real financial records." Marcus was already moving, pulling up files on his computer. Elena was an accountant before she met me. She'd been reviewing family finances for my grandmother. If she found something, if she threatened to expose, a knock shattered the moment. The door opened without invitation, always a power move. Charles Thornwood entered, 90 years old but moving like a predator, his eyes calculating and cold. "So," he said, smiling at Sarah. The little bastard finally crawled out from under her rock. The temperature in the room plummeted. Charles Thornwood moved with the calculated precision of a man who'd spent decades crushing opposition. His three-piece suit probably cost more than Sarah's mother had earned in a year, and he wore it like armor. "Father," Marcus's voice could cut glass. "Get out. This is still my company, boy." Charles settled into a leather chair without invitation. "At least until the board meeting next week. Then we'll see who's really in charge." Sarah's hands curled into fists. This man, this monster, had destroyed her mother's life, stolen Sarah's chance to have a father, condemned them both to poverty and struggle, and he sat there smiling about it. "You framed her," Sarah said, voice shaking with rage. "You stole $3 million and blamed my mother because she found out." Charles laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "Prove it." "The silversmith records prove Elena had the ring before," Marcus started. "Prove she didn't return it and steal it back later? Prove she wasn't a con artist who seduced my idiot son." Charles leaned forward. "You have nothing. You've always had nothing. And you'll die with nothing." "Why?" The word tore from Sarah. "Why did you hate her so much?" "Hate?" Charles looked genuinely puzzled. "I didn't hate Elena Reeves. I simply removed an obstacle. She was nobody. A secretary's daughter. A community college accountant playing at being worthy of my son. When she discovered I'd been restructuring company assets to avoid taxes, when she threatened to expose me, I did what was necessary." "You're confessing," Marcus breathed. "I'm chatting with family." Charles's smile widened. "In my own office, where I have every legal right to disable recording devices." He gestured at the ceiling. "I've been in this business 50 years, Marcus. You think I'd let you trap me with a phone recording?" Sarah's heart sank. He'd thought of everything just like he had 26 years ago. They were back where they started, knowing the truth but unable to prove it. "Besides," Charles continued, standing slowly, "Elena's dead. The money was spent decades ago. The statute of limitations has passed. There's nothing you can do to me that matters. I've already won." He moved toward the door, and Sarah felt their chance slipping away. Her mother had died believing she was a fugitive, believing she'd failed, believing the jewelry box. "She wrote it down," Sarah blurted. Charles froze. "My mother kept a diary, a detailed account of everything that happened. Dates, documents, conversations." Sarah was lying, betting everything on her mother's methodical nature. "She told me before she died. Said if anything happened to me, I should give it to the FBI." "You're bluffing." But Charles's hand trembled on the doorknob. "Am I?" Sarah pulled out her phone. "Because I'm prepared to find out. One call to the Southern District of New York. They love prosecuting wealthy tax cheats, don't they, Marcus? Especially when it involves fraud, theft, and conspiracy," Marcus added, catching on. "Even old cases if there's evidence of ongoing cover-up, which threatening Sarah today certainly qualifies as." Charles turned slowly, and for the first time, Sarah saw fear in his eyes. "What do you want?" "Truth," Sarah said. "Written confession. Full details. Clearing my mother's name." "In exchange for what?" Marcus stepped forward. "In exchange for me not destroying you completely. You resign from the board. You liquidate your shares at market value, no premium. The money goes into a foundation in Elena's name. And you get to live out your remaining days in your mansion instead of a federal prison," Sarah finished. Silence stretched like a knife's edge. Charles looked between them. His son and his granddaughter united against him. "You're making a mistake," Charles said quietly. "Family protects family." "You're right," Marcus replied. That's exactly what I'm doing. Charles's face twisted with rage, then calculation, then something resembling defeat. I want immunity in writing. We'll see what the prosecutors say, Sarah said. But it starts with the truth. All of it. Today. For 20 minutes, Charles talked while Marcus's lawyer recorded every word. The tax fraud, the frame theft, the threats that drove Elena into hiding. How he'd tracked her pregnancy. Made sure she understood that coming forward would mean prison. For her and abandonment for her child. I was protecting my family's reputation, Charles said finally, all pretense of charm gone. Everything I built would have been destroyed by scandal. By her. No, Sarah said softly. You destroyed yourself. You just didn't know it until today. As security escorted Charles from the building, Marcus's ownership stake, it turned out, had legally superseded his father's months ago. Sarah collapsed into a chair, shaking. Is it really over? She whispered. Marcus sat beside her. This stranger who was her father. The legal part? Just beginning. But the truth is out, Sarah. Your mother's name will be cleared. That's what matters. She died thinking she was a criminal. She died protecting you. That's what she wanted us to know. Marcus pulled out both rings, his and Elena's, placing them side by side. Veritas vincit. Truth conquers. She never stopped believing that. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the lobby of the Elena Reeves Foundation for Financial Justice. The building wasn't showy, her mother would have hated waste. But it was solid, real, and already making a difference. 37 families cleared of false financial crimes. 12 major corporations under investigation. One 90-year-old former billionaire awaiting trial. You don't have to do this, Marcus said, appearing at her elbow with 2 coffee cups. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm, learning to be family after decades apart. You could run anything, do anything. The settlement money alone means I can do exactly what I want. Sarah accepted the coffee. Which is this? Marcus nodded, pride evident in his expression. He'd aged differently these past months. Lighter somehow, despite the battle with his father tearing Thornwood Industries apart. Charles had fought the confession, claimed coercion, deployed an army of lawyers. But the evidence was overwhelming once investigators started digging. Sarah's diary bluff had turned real when they'd found her mother's storage unit, the one Elena had paid for religiously, even when she couldn't afford groceries. Inside, 26 years of meticulous records. Bank statements, newspaper clippings, photographs, and yes, a diary documenting every detail of Charles's crime. Elena had been ready to prove the truth all along. She'd just been waiting for it to be safe. She would be proud of you, Marcus said quietly. Of us. Sarah looked at the rings displayed in the lobby, Elena's and Marcus's, finally together again. The inscription caught the light. Veritas vincit. There's something I need to tell you, Sarah said. Something I found in Mom's final diary entry. Marcus tensed. They'd read most of the diaries together. A painful journey through Elena's years of hiding. But Sarah had kept the last entry private. She knew she was dying. Heart disease, advanced. Sarah's voice cracked. She wrote about you. About how hard it was not to contact you. Not to tell you about me. She wanted to so many times. Why didn't she? Because Charles had threatened her. Said if she ever surfaced, he'd make sure you went to prison too, as her accomplice. Sarah turned to face him. She chose your freedom over everything else. Over us being a family. That's how much she loved you. Marcus closed his eyes, and for a moment he was that 25-year-old again, heartbroken and deceived. I should have looked harder. Should have known she wouldn't just steal and run. You were young. He was your father. You trusted him. Sarah touched his arm. She forgave you, Marcus. It's in the diary. She understood. But can you forgive me? For not being there? For the life you had to live? Sarah had thought about this question every day since learning the truth. The anger had been there, fierce and hot, when she'd first realized Marcus's wealth could have given her everything she'd lacked. Education without debt. Medical care that might have saved her mother. A childhood without hunger. But she'd also learned what her mother had known. That survival itself was a victory. That poverty had taught her compassion. Marcus was only now learning. That she'd been raised by a woman of extraordinary courage, even if that woman had been forced into impossible circumstances. "I forgive you," Sarah said. "But more than that, I choose you as my father." Moving forward, Marcus's shoulders shook. He pulled her into an embrace, and Sarah let herself cry for the life they'd lost and the one they were building together. "Charles's trial starts next month," Marcus said finally, pulling back. "His lawyers are pushing for a plea deal. Let them push. We have the evidence." Sarah's voice hardened. "He needs to face what he did." "Agreed." Marcus hesitated. "There's something else. The board wants me to take Charles's CEO position. Full control of Thornwood Industries. And I want to offer you a partnership. Not because you're my daughter, though you are, and I'm grateful for that every day, but because you understand what this foundation needs to be. You've lived the consequences of unchecked corporate power." Sarah had expected this conversation, had been preparing her answer. "Partnership, yes, but I don't want to run Thornwood Industries. I want to run this." She gestured at the foundation. "I want to make sure no other Elena Reeves gets crushed by someone like Charles. That no other Sarah grows up wondering why her mother is so scared all the time." Marcus smiled, genuine, warm. "Then let's do both. I'll handle the corporate empire. You handle the justice. Deal." They shook hands, formal and serious, then laughed at the absurdity of it. "Your mother kept a second ring," Marcus said suddenly. "The one I gave her. It's been in her storage unit all these years. I think—" He pulled a small box from his pocket. "I think she'd want you to have it." Sarah opened the box with trembling hands. Elena's engagement ring gleamed up at her, the twin to Marcus's. But inside the band, a new inscription had been added in her mother's careful handwriting. Asterisk para mi hija, encuentra tu verdad. Asterisk, for my daughter, find your truth. "She knew," Sarah whispered. "She knew someday I'd understand. She knew you'd be strong enough to finish what she started." Marcus touched the sapphire gently. "Veritas vincit, Sarah. Your truth conquered in the end." The courtroom was packed. Sarah sat in the front row, Marcus beside her, as Charles Thornwood's verdict was read. Guilty on 14 counts. Fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The evidence had been overwhelming. Elena's diaries, corroborated by forensic accountants who'd torn through decades of Thornwood financial records. Charles showed no emotion as they led him away. 92 years old now, he'd likely die in prison. Sarah felt no joy in this, but no guilt either. Justice wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. Outside, reporters swarmed. Sarah had become something of a media phenomenon, the waitress who'd brought down a corporate dynasty with a ring and her mother's courage. But she'd learned to navigate the attention, to use it for the foundation's work. "Ms. Reeves, what do you say to critics who claim you're only successful because of your father's money?" Sarah stopped, turned to the cameras. This was the moment, the lesson she'd been waiting to share. "My mother raised me on minimum wage," she said clearly. "She taught me that character isn't built in boardrooms or inherited through DNA. It's forged through choices, the choice to tell the truth even when it costs everything. The choice to protect others even at your own expense. The choice to fight for justice even when you're powerless." She held up her mother's ring, letting the sapphire catch the sunlight. "This ring says Veritas vincit, truth conquers. But here's what I learned. Truth doesn't conquer on its own. It conquers because people like my mother, people who have everything to lose and nothing to gain, choose it anyway. Every single day." Sarah looked directly into the nearest camera. "So to everyone watching, wherever you are, whatever your struggle, remember that your truth matters. Your voice matters. One waitress with one question changed everything, not because of who my father turned out to be, but because my mother taught me to ask the question in the first place." Marcus stepped forward, adding, "The Elena Reeves Foundation is accepting applications for our next round of financial justice cases. If you've been wrongly accused, If you're fighting corporate corruption, if you need help making your truth heard, contact us. We're listening. And here's my ask for all of you, Sarah continued, feeling the weight of her mother's legacy. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about justice or courage or the power of truth, don't just watch and scroll away. Comment below. What truth are you ready to fight for? Subscribe to stay updated on our cases. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. She paused, feeling Elena's presence like a warm hand on her shoulder. My mother died believing she'd failed, but she didn't. She planted seeds of truth that took 26 years to bloom. Your truth matters too, even if you can't see the harvest yet. Plant it anyway. Fight for it anyway. The world changes one truth at a time, one brave voice at a time, one person choosing integrity over safety. The moral: truth may be buried, delayed, or denied, but it cannot be destroyed. And sometimes the courage to speak one small truth, "My mother had a ring like that," can unravel decades of lies and restore justice for those who can no longer fight for themselves. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Never be afraid to ask the question that changes everything. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what truth you're fighting for. Hit subscribe to follow more stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And share this with someone who needs reminded that their courage counts. Because truth conquers. Always. But only if we're brave enough to speak it.